Love me tender, love me sweet, never let me go. You have made my life complete, and I love you so. Love me tender, love me true, all my dreams fulfill. For my darling, I love you, and I always will.
Well, here's a classic Elvis tune. I actually sang and played this for my sweetheart on Valentine's Day. It's not a hard tune, and we're going to play it kind of a simple fashion. The original recording I heard was just a nylon string guitar and Elvis singing. So I'm going to go with that. We're going to use a D chord, an E7 chord, we've got an A7 chord, a G chord, and an F sharp 7. Yes, I'm using a bar version. If you worry about it, don't. I've got an alternate chord for you that works pretty well. That'll make it so you don't have to play a bar chord at all. And you can always add the bar chord later. So in the next section, I'll go into the chords in a little more detail. And then we'll do a practice walkthrough. That means I'll actually show you where the chords line up with the words. And we'll just do one simple strum to map out the song. This is what I often do when I'm learning a song, and I really encourage you to go with it. But at any time, if you find you don't need that part, you can skip to the next section. After the walkthrough, I'm going to go through the basic strum. I'm using an alternate bass drum. What that means is I'll play the regular bass note and then an alternate kind of back and forth. It's fun, and it's a useful technique to practice. Of course, you can always do a simpler approach with just one bass note. And then finally, what I imagine everybody's waiting for is the play along. So I'll go into the chords now. Let's do this. So we'll start out with what I call a folk style D chord, an open D chord. I mentioned when we get to the strum, we're going to do an alternating bass drum. Again, that's optional, but I'm going to point out the bass notes now, and we'll come back at that with the strum as well. So for the D chord, the fourth string is your main bass note. It's also the name of the chord. It's a D string. And the alternate we'll mostly use is the open fifth string. Then comes E7. There are many versions of E7, including some that use the pinky. I'm doing a kind of a simple version with two fingers. First finger on the first fret of the third string, and the second finger on the fifth string, second fret. Bass note is the low E. Now, we could use a variety of alternate bass notes. I'm going to go for the fifth string. A7 is probably one you've played many times. It's often one of the chords people start off with. And of course, the bass note is the A note, the fifth string, open A. I'm going to use for the alternate the low sixth string. Next comes G, and there are many ways to play the G. I'm going to mostly play the three finger, what I call the pinky G, like that. And it has to do with where I'm coming from and where I'm going to. But any G that you find that works for you is perfectly fine. We are going to use that bass note, the low sixth string. That's the G note. And then I'm going to go with the fifth string for the alternate. It's not the only alternate. If you want to use a version of the G and you're not fingering the fifth string, go ahead and use that fourth string as the alternate bass note. And then finally, the F sharp 7 chord. Now, I'm going to show you that chord, and I'll also show you what I'll call an alternate chord that we can use in place of it if you're not ready for bar chords. I'm going to make it as a bar chord. It's a bar across the second fret. It's very similar to an F bar chord, but up one fret, and I take the pinky off. That's what makes it a seventh. So I've got my third finger here on the fifth string, that's fourth fret, and then the second finger over here on the third string, third fret, right? The bass note is that low sixth string, that's an F sharp. So if you're not for bar chords, I'm going to show you the alternate now. If you're kind of there and you want to work on your bar chords, I encourage you to practice it a little bit separately before you start integrating it into the song. One of the biggest problems I see with people using bar chords is they try to learn them by playing songs when they're not quite there. And so it ends up being a very slow process. The alternate chord in place of this, if you don't want to do the bar chord, is a D7. That's an open D string, and I've got my second and third fingers straddling the third and first string, the second fret. First finger goes on the second string, first fret. Very similar, right, to the folk style D with that one note. Instead of here, it's here. D7. So you're probably wondering, like I would be, how does D7 work in place of F sharp 7? Well, I won't go into the heavy theory part of this, but in fact, they share a lot of the same notes. And as far as the harmony goes, it works with this melody. And of course, you'll have to hear it and see how it works for you. So with that, let's put these chords to work, and we'll go through a basic practice walkthrough. So before I get started going through the song with the chords and the words, I have a couple of tips that'll help you learn the song much faster, I think. First of all, it really pays to look at the form of a song before you start working on it. I know when I started, I kind of just start from the top and keep, chucking along until I got to the bottom and then start over and try to hit the places that I didn't do very well. Now I look at a song and I say, gee, are there repeating parts? Are there something I could practice that once I practice it, I'll be able to use it several times? In this case, the first thing you'll notice is that the song has a song structure that's very common. You do a verse, a chorus, a verse, and then two choruses. Pretty much all you got to learn is the verse and the chorus, and you got the chords. If you're going to sing it, you got to learn different words for each of the verses. The chorus is exactly the same. It's much easier to remember a song like this when you have the pattern clear in your mind. The other thing is there's a chord progression that's used over and over in this song, and I'm going to recommend you practice that first and then try it with the song. Here's the progression. D, E7, A7, and back to D. This same pattern that kind of goes in a circle, D, E7, A7, D, happens several times in this song. I encourage you to practice it first. Make sure you can switch between those chords easily, and you'll have about 80% of the song. You'll want to watch out then for the G chord, and of course that F sharp 7, unless you're substituting the D7. Let's start out going through the first verse. You start with a D, and the words are, love me tender, and then it goes to that E7, love me true, and then we go to A7, never let me, back to D. What did I tell you about that pattern? We're going to do it again. You have made my E7 life complete, and then comes A7, and I love you, back to D. So that's the entire verse. Did you notice we just did that pattern I showed you 2 times in a row? I'll do it one more time. You can try playing along. Don't worry if it's still rough. Here we go. Love me tender, E7, love me true, A7, never let me, back to D. Let's start that pattern over. D. You have made my E7 complete, A7, and I love you, D. And then comes the chorus. Okay, so now we'll do this chorus. Actually, you're going to use it 3 times, so we're going to learn it once and you're going to apply it 3 times. 2 at the end, once after the first verse. It starts with a D chord. Love me tender. Now comes that F sharp 7. Love me true. To G. All my dreams to D fulfilled. Almost done. Start with a D. Oh, my darling, E7, I love you, A7, and I always to D will. Did you notice we got that pattern in one more time at the end? So the entire first verse is that pattern twice. Then there's a different chord progression. That's that F sharp 7 and a G. And then it does the same pattern again. So if you practice that pattern, you can see you've got most of the song. We'll go through the chorus again, and then I'm going to show you what it sounds like with the alternate. Play along with me. If you want, try the D7 in place of the F sharp 7. Love me tender, F sharp 7, love me true, G, all my dreams full, back to D. Now starting on the D, for my darling, I love you, A7, and I always D. Okay, so now let's try it with that D7. It's gonna go like this. Love me tender, love me true, all my dreams fulfilled. Sounds okay, right? Try it with me. Just practice, whether you're going to do the F sharp 7 or the D7. Here we go. Love me tender, D7, love me true, all my dreams, back to D. We'll finish it up. For my darling, I love you, and I always will. So again, you do the same chord progression for the verse that we did in the beginning, and then you do the chorus 2 times. End of song. Let's talk about that strum. So as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm going with the sound that Elvis did on one of his early recordings. I like it, the simplicity of it. But if you want to use an acoustic guitar, it's really the same thing. You're just going to use a pick and do the exact same strum. I'm going to use my thumb and strum the chords with my thumb. So let's start with that D chord. As I mentioned, the bass note is on the 4th string, but we're going to alternate and use that 5th string as well. So here's the basic strum. You play the bass note, then you strum down, then you play the alternate and strum. Bass, alternate. Try that with me. Ready? Hit it. Bass note, strum, alternate, and strum. Repeat it. It's in 4/4 time, so we'd count it like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's apply the same idea to the E7. We're going to use the low E for the bass note, strum, and I'm going to use the 5th string for the alternate. Sounds good to me. Now I'm going on to the A7. You notice I'm doing that pattern we talked about. Start with the A bass note, and then go to the low E for your alternate. So let's try that. You can play along. Come on. Slow. Go. A bass note, strum, low E. A bass note, and low E. By the way, if I were playing this song, I'd probably occasionally throw in a different alternate just for variety. A, and you could play the 4th string right there. That sounds good too. Let's stick with the low 6th string for the alternate for now. You can always experiment as you get the hang of the song. So we basically played the chords that make up that little pattern that I talked about. D, E7, A7, and D. Let's just try that once through. So we're going to do 1 strum per chord, and 1 strum means you hit the bass note, strum, alternate strum, and then we go on. So start with the D. Bass note, 4th string. Hit it, D. Strum, alternate. Now to E, and the 6th string's that bass note, E7. And hit the 5th string. A7, 5th string for bass, and low 6th string, and back to D. Highly recommend this little exercise, I'll call it, as a warm-up for playing this song. But now it's time to fill in the other couple of chords, the G and the F sharp 7. Yeah, I'll go ahead and show you with a D7, same as D, by the way, but I'll show you. Start with the G, and I'm going to make the G with my pinky. Again, any way that works for you is fine. 6th string for bass note, strum, and I'm going to do the 5th string. In other videos, you might have seen me sometimes use the 4th string. It all works. I'm going to stick with the 5th string for this particular song, but don't worry if you want to alternate or try something different. And then the F sharp 7, and I want to use that F on the 6th string for the bass note. And the fifth string makes a good alternate. If you're doing a D7, we'd use the open fourth string and the open fifth string. Okay, so I would encourage you to practice just changing the chords with just a straight down strum, and maybe go through the practice like I did, and then add the strum afterwards, which has a little more complexity, but you're kind of building up to be able to put it all together. And then when you're ready, we'll go on to the play along section.
Love me tender, love me sweet, never let me go. You have made my life complete, and I love you so. Love me tender, love me true, all my dreams fulfill. For my darling, I love you, and I always will. Love me tender, love me long, take me to your heart, for it's there that I belong, and will never part. Love me tender, love me true, all my dreams fulfill. For my darling, I love you, and I always will. Love me tender, love me dear, tell me you are mine. I'll be yours throughout the years, till the end of time. Love me tender, love me true, all my dreams fulfill. For my darling, I love you, and I always will.
Thanks for hanging out with me. I'm Thomas Michaud. Wherever you're watching this, please scroll down, leave me a comment. And if you'd like some help with bar chords, I want you to watch this next video now.